I spent more time falling off the map in Etherwind than actually fighting monsters. And I think that tells you everything you need to know. I don't do long, in-depth MMO reviews. I jump in, play for a bit, and decide very quickly, does this game actually vibe with me? Etherwind is a 2.5D side-scrolling MMO focused on cooperative play and long-term progression. But for me, a few things stood out immediately. From April 10th through April 12th, Etherwind ran a small-scale alpha playtest. It's a 2.5D side-scrolling MMORPG focused on cooperative PvE, social play, and long-term progression through a rebirth system. During the playtest, I was given access to 4 core archetypes: Fighter, Vitalist, Archer, and Rogue, along with a small world to play around in. Etherwind features a soft class system. Player roles are shaped through stat allocation, equipped gear, and learned and preserved skills across rebirths. For the playtest, I started at level 10 and I got to immediately choose a class. I chose Fighter. Additional classes, Reaper, Wizard, and Blood Mage, will be available in the live game. So at its core, Etherwind is built around cooperative PvE. There is no PvP. It's a shared, persistent world with party-based progression incentives and a long-term rebirth system, which was not active in the test. The rebirth system is actually one of the more interesting ideas. You level up, build your character, and then you start over. But not really. Each rebirth makes you permanently stronger. It's less about creating a new character and more about evolving the same one across multiple lives. Now, whether this feels rewarding or repetitive is going to depend entirely on your tolerance for replaying early progression. First impressions on the visuals. The art style leans into a soft, chibi-inspired 2.5D look. The character models have big heads and small bodies. The world is cartoony with minimal detail and very approachable graphics. The characters rely heavily on large expressive eyes, which are both charming and doll-like. Personally, I thought the characters were cute. The style works, it just needs more variety. The character creator was small with limited options, but that's something that may improve as the game develops. This is an alpha. I've received criticism for being too harsh on games that are in early testing. But what I'm usually harsh on is the core design of the game. These core elements don't likely change. I don't do long, exhaustive reviews. I approach games the same way I actually play them, by jumping in and seeing if they click. I focus on whether the core experience, controls, visuals, and combat connects with me the right way. While that may seem quick or even superficial, I've found that if a game doesn't click early, it rarely changes later. This is less about judging the game in its entirety and more about whether it fits my personal playstyle. For Etherwind, a few things were immediately off-putting. Is there a gaming world that exists that doesn't use the spacebar for jump? Yes, as a matter of fact, that game is called Etherwind, and they decided to bind the jump to the Alt key. Jumping seems to be a core component to this game, and not being able to use the spacebar was not intuitive. I couldn't figure out how to rebind the keys, so I was stuck with Alt jumping throughout the playtest, which usually meant I was falling off the map. Movement was also fully keyboard-based, using WASD or arrows, which I personally struggle with. I strongly prefer mouse-driven movement, so this was already an uphill battle. My biggest issue with Etherwind is core to the game's design. It's a side-scrolling MMO. That's not a small detail. That's the entire experience. You've got narrow paths, platforming, and very little in the way of guardrails, which means when the game isn't confining me to a path, it's sending me over the edge, literally. Between the alt jump and the tight level design, I spent a lot of time falling off edges and respawning, and it completely pulled me out of the experience. For me, this style felt restrictive. I prefer open worlds where I can move freely and not something that just funnels me through narrow paths and gates. This is a core design choice. It's not likely to change. So if you don't like side-scrollers, this probably isn't your game. I don't have the lexicon to describe the combat. There's no clear targeting system, at least not one that felt intuitive. I basically stood in front of a monster and pressed one of my 2 attack keys. This caused me to accidentally hit other mobs around my intended victim. In the tutorial area, this wasn't much of an issue, but out in the open world, that gets dangerous quickly. I strongly prefer tab targeting, so this felt messy and imprecise. This might improve over time, but first impressions were rough. Obviously, I didn't like the controls, but I also found the UI to be basic. The UI was fine for an alpha, but I do hope it gets attention before release. Tonally, it just didn't match the game. The world is sweet, stylized, and approachable. The UI felt functional and disconnected from that aesthetic. Not a deal breaker right now, but something to watch long term. My final irritant was the rain. It rained all the time. This is definitely something that can be improved as the game develops. I have the same issue with night cycles, and I know it sounds petty to complain about weather and darkness, but it matters. It made the game harder to see, it made the recording worse. No one wants to watch a dark video. It added frustration on top of already frustrating mechanics. I'm learning your game. I don't need additional barriers when I'm already frustrated with controls and movement. I'm not asking for 24/7 sunshine, but in the early zones when you're figuring out life, removing additional barriers to entry does make the game more enjoyable. So what did I like? Well, I thought the characters were cute. That chibi-inspired stylized art worked in this world. I would have liked to see more variety in the hair and features, but that's something that can be easily added later on. When I started, I tried to rush through the tutorial area, but my first attempt at world exploration didn't go well. The death animation was surprisingly great. I ended up returning to the starting area to kill blobs. I got pretty efficient at doing this and actually found it enjoyable when I wasn't falling off edges and forgetting how to jump. I only tried the fighter class. I got to level 12 and I added a handful of skill points to my main damage attack. And I felt confident enough to go explore the larger world again. I took a cautious approach this time, killing the more advanced green mobs and then eventually progressing to what I can only call brown marshmallows. I don't know what these mobs are supposed to be. I didn't really feel like I was ever in an MMORPG. My vocalized lamentations about the rain remained unanswered in world chat, which leads me to believe I was a solitary occupant on this test server. Another player eventually dropped a yo in chat. I generally prefer not to engage with the yo demographic. I'm not sure when yo is ever an appropriate RPG term for engagement. Here's the reality. This is an alpha. Things will improve. But I don't judge games on polish. I judge them on core design. And for me, those core elements didn't click. Side-scrolling structures, platforming, heavy movement, keyboard-focused controls, that loose combat feel, they didn't click. That said, if you like side-scrolling MMOs, there is something here. Once I found rhythm, I did have moments of enjoyment. But every time I started to settle in, I'd just fall off the ledge and be reminded, this just isn't my kind of game. If this sounds like your kind of thing, Etherwind might be worth keeping an eye on. As for me, I'll be over here looking for a world I don't fall out of. Until next time, keep exploring. I'll see you in the next world.